Yo, what's up guys? Tyler Davis back with Keep Showing Up. Man, today what I wanted to do is really just kind of peel back some layers. Wanted to take a step back. So the whole keep showing up mindset that I talk about and what this channel really is all about. It's got a starting place. There's a beginning to my story. Like most of us, we all have a story. We've all been through things. Today is March 18th, 2021. I'm currently 40 years old. So for 40 years, I've been writing my story. Just like most of you, we all have things that happen along the way that cause us to be the people that we are, that we find looking in the mirror. So there's lots of different things. A lot of you guys that have known me through the whole Beachbody change and the P90X thing and the weight loss and sobriety and stuff like that. Well, I mean, of course there's a backstory. So I'm 40 now. My journey started to change my life about 11 years ago. So what led up to a lot of that stuff? What is some of the stuff? And I mean, really, I'll probably end up breaking this up into parts, but really you just gotta kind of go back. So, I'm from Fort Wayne, Indiana, born and raised, lived here all my life other than the 2 years that I spent in Orlando, Florida, when I went to school at Full Sail for audio engineering. So other than that, born and raised in Fort Wayne. My parents split up when I was 3. So I would say that's kind of one of the first things that I can remember back there. I can literally remember the day that we packed up all my stuffed animals into a big box and I'm in the back of the truck pulling out of the driveway, and I can see my dad still standing there at the doorway. So with my mom's amazing. I have an older brother named Kale. I also have an older brother named Ron that I didn't know about until I was 25. It's a whole nother story along the dad story that I'll get to. So after my folks split up, me and my brother lived with my mom. My mom did an amazing job. She worked her butt off. She hustled, and it was when I was back then, you don't really know what's going on. You go stay at your dad's on the weekend. You live with your mom. Childhood, we didn't want for anything. We lived in some apartments here in Fort Wayne. I remember my mom working really hard. She actually started, probably back around that time when I was young, 5, 6 years old, back when I can remember. She started in the mortgage lending thing, which is what I do today. And my dad, we'd go there on the weekends and things like that. As we got older, my dad met a lady named Becky, which became my stepmom, and she was awesome. But a lot of the times as we got older and older, we'd go over there and my dad just worked all the time, so we'd end up spending time with Becky. Becky was awesome. She was amazing. She made sure we always had fun. We, like I said, childhood, can't complain, man. We never went for anything. Did we have it, was everything handed to us? Absolutely not. But, my mom grinded. She worked hard. So did my dad. My dad was always a hustler. He was a business owner. He owned his own companies. When I was little, he had a garage here where he had wrecker services, fixing cars, things like that. He was always known as one of the best mechanics around from all the stories I was told. As I got older, he owned trucking companies, dump trucks, triaxles, different things like that. And I worked for him for 7 years there. And that was mostly the 7 years that I actually got to spend around my dad. I always called him Larry, didn't call him Dad. And we'll lead up to that part. But, as growing up, and then my mom ended up meeting a guy named Kevin. So Kevin, moved in. My mom and Kevin got married. So as I'm growing up and stuff like that, Kevin was the guy he was my Little League coach, which I felt terrible for him because I sucked at baseball. Didn't like it. He was like an all-star baseball player, so it probably broke his heart that I was terrible. I mean, I was straight up the worst Little League player ever. My heart wasn't in it, just wasn't my thing. So I was always kind of like more into music, things like that. I was always a little heavier, growing up. So I always had on a little chubby, a little extra weight, which, led to some situations that are very vivid in my mind that as my weight progressed, I always held on to. One of which was, I think I was in like 5th grade. And the way I was is, I'm short, stocky, build, So I carried a lot of my weight right between here and my waist. And I always had like really big man chest, man, straight up. So I remember one of the big things, I was at the Roller Dome, got real hot, took off the jersey I was wearing, had a white t-shirt on, and I remember this girl looked over at me, she was like, "Are you a boy or a girl?" And it was just one of them things where I was like, man, and I knew she had asked me because, I carried a lot of the weight in my chest, but that always stuck with me. And, my wife could tell you, up until I lost all my weight, you would never see me in a white t-shirt, ever, ever. Never wore one again, because the words from that little girl when I was in 5th grade were burnt into my mind. So that, messed with me. It's one of those scars. As we go through our life, we gain our scars. So as we start to grow up, we get a little bit older. My older brother, awesome dude. He partied a little bit. I didn't really as much back then. Of course, I was younger brother, so I wasn't exposed to it as much. But growing up, knowing that my dad had issues with alcohol and stuff like that, like I was totally against it. It wasn't until, I got probably, 16, 15, 16, started being around it a little bit more, and having an older brother who ran with the popular crowd, or what you would call it, I was, just kind of, it was a blessing, because I just got allowed to come to these parties and these places and hang out with these people and stuff because, I was his little brother. So, I took every advantage of that I could, but as things got older, and I started, just making bad choices and things like that, and like, most kids growing up, you have girlfriend. I had one, the first real girlfriend that I would say, started in middle school, made its way up through, started in high school, I'd found out that she messed around with somebody, all heartbroken and stuff like that, and just, but then I ended up, finding another girlfriend, like we do, and then that was, that was what I thought back then, like we always do, that it was the one. Long story short, the big pivot and the big transition in my life happened around that time. So I was 16 years old at the time. I was a sophomore and she was a senior. Great girl, really cool. It was senior skip day, and since I hung out with all these older kids and stuff like that, it was just a given that I was invited. And so I went, and that was the day that she got pregnant. Didn't know about it right then, didn't find out till a little later. So one of the biggest transitions in my life from a carefree, pretty much carefree, happy kid was I had to grow up really fast when I was told those words, that she was pregnant. And then, and I didn't handle it well. I was still a kid myself. For years, even to this day, I still carry some guilt. It's just like there was doctor's appointments that she asked me to go to. I didn't go. I was hanging out with a different crowd, and I was avoiding it, and I wasn't there for her like I should have been. Again, it's no excuse. I made my choices. Do I regret it? Yeah. Do I wish I could have done it different? Sure. I wouldn't be the man I am today had I done that, and she wouldn't be the woman she is. And it's the way it worked out. So I was a junior in high school when my oldest daughter was born. She's 23 now, and she lives, about 4 hours away. It was an open adoption at the time, so we got a chance to, the day of the hospital, the adoptive mom and dad were there. They were kind to us, they allowed us the next day to spend a little time. And, I remember the next day when we had that opportunity, her mom, she was like, "I can't do this." And instead, I sat in the nursery for like 4 hours or something like that and just held her and just stared in her eyes. And that image is still burnt into my mind, because then the notary public came, and And we had to sign the papers, that basically says I relinquish this child. You sign a document that basically you brought a life into this world, and with just a signature, you make a declaration and a decision that changes many lives for many years to come. And it still changes lives. So then you go home from the hospital trying to deal with that at 17 years old. And around that same time, that Kevin guy I mentioned, who was my dad for, basically stepdad, but he was the guy that was there day to day, for like 14 years. I woke up one morning and my grandma was at the house, and that was kind of odd. It was a school day, and turns out that Kevin left a note on the table and split. Never came back. After 14 years, we get a note on the table, and that's it. And it was pretty obvious, just because at that time I had worked for my dad in the truck garage, so I was around all these guys, and some of them had even made mention that they thought they saw him out and about and things like that. So it was a pretty coward way to go out, but that messed with all of us quite a bit. So that happened, right around the same time. This is a close proximity in time when I was around 17, 18 years old. Had a really good friend growing up, man, and in my eyes, he was like indestructible. He was the nicest dude in the world, all-star football player, and he was one of the biggest human beings to that point that I had ever seen. In my mind, he was like Superman. We were all at a party, keg party, out in the country, and we were gonna leave one spot and go to another one. And I'll never forget, talking to him for that last time, and then I'll never forget hearing people like cheering, and he was laughing and stuff, and he was in a convertible Camaro. And I remember seeing him pull away, and he's hanging out the back, like waving at everybody. So then me and some other buddies, one friend of mine gets in my truck, and I'm following somebody, and we're going down this backcountry road, and all of a sudden he just takes off. And then he hits his brakes really hard, so I stop behind him. And I'm like, what is going on? What's going on? And I see him jump out of the truck, and he takes off running. So my eyes follow him, and I look over, and all of a sudden I notice in the field that there's a car. And there's a guy standing there staring at the car. And I look down at the bottom of the car, and there's two legs sticking out from underneath the car. And that was my friend that I had just watched leave the party. The guy that was driving hadn't been drinking, thank goodness. It was just an honest-to-goodness accident, that's what accidents are. So me and the guy that was in front of me, and the guy that was with me, and some bystanders that had stopped, we lifted the car off, moved it off of him, and looked down and see him laying there, and me and my other buddy, got down, started doing CPR. Another girl that was at the party stopped. She's, helping, chest compressions and breathing and stuff like that. The ambulance comes, takes him, and so I hop back in my truck. It's like a scene out of a movie. There's high school kids running all over, and there's headlights, and it's dark, and it's muddy, and so we're going, and somehow I ended up beating the ambulance to the hospital. And I'll never forget, it was like a scene out of a movie. I'm coming up the parking lot, and the ambulance pulls in, and my friend's mom and dad were standing there, and like the back of the ambulance opens up, and I'll never forget just hearing this scream from his mom, and just seeing her hit the ground, and they took him in, and cops took the guy that was driving, and then we're all standing there, and I didn't even realize I had blood and stuff, or, just stuff on me. So the nurses were trying to check me out, and I'm like, I'm fine. And, soon enough, another good friend's dad came walking out, and, he let us know he was gone. So everybody is just emotional wreck. We're all high school kids. Superman just died, man. I mean, how does that happen? So it was a rough funeral. So that happened. Kevin split, gave my daughter up for adoption. all in close proximity at time. So for me, this is where the addiction and the alcohol stuff started to really take shape, because at that time, like, my mom wasn't necessarily, she was going through her own thing, and I didn't want to try and burden her with helping me figure out the mess that was going on in here. And my older brother, he's great, but he's not the guy you have those conversations with. At that time, my friends, I don't know if it was that they weren't mature enough or it was just me not wanting to open up. It's like one of them things where now it's like, I always tell people to talk about their feelings, and if you need help, reach out, because that's not what I did. I turned inward. That was where I had an older brother. I knew his friends. It was easy to get a big bottle of alcohol. I had a good job working for my dad, still lived at home with my mom. I was making good money, and I would get a big bag of weed and a big bottle of alcohol, and I would sit alone in my room, and I would listen to music, and I would just bury everything. Like, everything. All the stuff I was going through. All the pain, all the hurt, all the emotions, all the confusion, all the heartbreak. I just stuffed it all down. I was a broken kid. And instead of reaching out and asking for help, I just turned to alcohol and drugs. And I just started practicing taking all my pain and all my emotions and just stuffing it down as deep into myself as I could. So that formed a habit to where, as I got older, and when you're depressed and stuff like that, you don't care about the weight starts to come on. I wasn't dealing with any emotions, and that just became a habit. So as I moved forward through my life, every emotion I felt had to have a joint with it, had to have a drink with it, and it just became a habit. It continued to just spiral for years and years and years and years and years. But so the turning point for me was that. It was those major events that just, one year I'm this happy kid, and then because of the choices that I made and choices that other people made and how it affected me, it sent my life in a way different path. Now, me having my daughter, she's amazing. It's a true blessing. All of it's a blessing. I can't say I would change anything, because none of us would be the people that we are today. So it's not fair to say that. I'm thankful that I've had an opportunity at this point to hear her voice, to talk to her, to meet with her. It's amazing. And I hope the best for her mom, because like I said, I was a kid, and I thought like a kid, and I made choices like a kid, and it wasn't fair. But it was those things and stuffing down that regret and that pain, and then that Kevin guy that split, that I still haven't talked to this day. I don't even think he lives that far from here. The fact that I haven't ran into him, who knows? I really don't got much to say to him. And then throughout this, I worked for my dad, so I'd kind of talk to him, but again, man, he wasn't really the guy you share your emotions with. So that was, I would say that's where the turning point to my addiction started. And with addiction and alcohol being one of the simplest, forms of sugar there is, tons of calories in it, as I got older and the drinking and stuff like that, like I mentioned before, I was always into music, so I started DJing. So 2 turntables, straight up records, that just became a part of what I did, man. I loved music, so I started DJing and things like that, and eventually started working in bars and clubs, which just fueled the fire. It was one of those things where it just became a way of life. I was burning the candle at both ends. I didn't know what a functioning alcoholic was, but that's definitely what I was. So it became habit, because like I said, whether I was happy, drink, sad, drink, joint, just to have dinner. Everything. I mean, it was, and then once you get so far down the rabbit hole, that's how you handle everything. It just becomes a part of who you are. But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. So when I decided to make the changes, you know, and I'm gonna end this video here. So that's the first step to my journey. You know, it stems back to choices. Some of it is circumstance, but the biggest thing is the choices and the way I decided to handle it or not handle it. Instead, I turned to alcohol and drugs, which I think is easy for a lot of people to do because it's an escape. You think you're escaping reality, but really you're not. All that pain that you're stuffing down, it's still there. You still have to deal with it someday. It's all gonna come to light. So if there's anything that I could say, if there's anybody that is going through a similar situation or anything like that, or whatever your story is, because we all have one, don't run from it. Don't try and hide it. Don't try and stuff it away and mask it. That pain's still gonna be there. It isn't gonna go away until you learn how to deal with it, and you gotta deal with it head on. And if you do need help, find somebody. There's all kinds of suicide hotlines, and there's mental health clinics and things like that, and there are truly people that care. Just take advantage of it. Use the resources that are there. Don't turn inward. Don't go down the same path. I lost a good chunk of my life to alcohol and things because I didn't deal with the pain as it came. So if you're hurting, man, just reach out. There's people that care. You don't got to do it alone. And most of all, don't forget, God upstairs, man, He's got your back. It took me a long time to realize that He was with me the whole time, and that's how I got through it. So on that note, I'd like to, wrap this up. I'd love to hear some comments. I'd love to hear some of the things that you guys have gone through. Maybe we have some similarities to it. But the keep showing up mindset and everything that I talk about, I got to where I am today, having gone through those things. There's more to the story, which I'll pick that up in the next little part to this. We'll call that part 2. Where the next step of it, where the addiction and things really get crazy and that come into light moment. But just there's no understanding of why is this guy sitting in front of the camera, what the hell is keep showing up even all about, without a little bit of backstory. So I just wanted to take a second to share. I appreciate you guys' time. I got love for you guys. We're all going through something. We're all in it together. Lift each other up. Just start with a smile. But the biggest thing is you got to take care of yourself. You got to learn how to deal with emotions as they come. You got to take care of you. If you don't take care of you, you can't be the best version of you for all those people that are counting on you. And one person can make a difference. I think there's plenty of examples throughout history that one person, one voice, can have a huge impact. And that's all I want to do, is just share with you guys what I've been through, so it can help one person not make some of the same mistakes. I appreciate you guys, truly. Look forward to seeing you guys in the comments. Keep showing up.